multi-billion-dollar and million-dollar companies are showing us every single day how to build our businesses. The question is, are we listening? Just the other day, I was driving down the street. I was in an outdoor mall here where I live in the Jacksonville, Florida area. And I was in by the airport area where they just built, well, probably not just built, but they have a BJ's out there. Well, the old building for that BJ's used to be a Regal Cinema theater. And I was driving past it and I remember thinking to myself, I was like, oh, I used to love going to that theater. And the theater shut down not too long after the pandemic, but they ended up, of course, some of you probably know the story. They ended up filing for bankruptcy and they shut down basically all their theaters. And so I just remember thinking to myself, oh man, I used to love going to that theater because it was close to my house. And then after the pandemic, I was probably a little selfish, but after the pandemic, people still weren't kind of going to the theater. So whenever I would go there, I would most likely have the theater to myself, or there'll be like maybe one or two people there. So clearly, they were going out of business pretty quickly because definitely, even though I was going to the theaters to see movies, people still were not warming up to that fact. And so you could tell that they were losing money. Um, but I just remember thinking to myself, the fact they had to file for bankruptcy, they showed us an example of how to build our businesses. Um, on this channel, I'm always talking about how it's so important that we try to build as much of a debt-free life as we can, or just a completely debt-free life, not even as much of. And I don't think that should only apply for personal. I think that that should apply for business as well. And some people may think, well, it's impossible to build a business without debt. It's actually not. There are people that's doing it. There are plenty of companies and businesses, and even some that are making millions and billions of dollars, or maybe billions, maybe millions. I'm maybe not billions, but there are million-dollar companies who are building their companies and they're using the cash capital that they have, and they're doing just fine. Um, the thing that I want to shed light on today is how important it is in businesses, especially small businesses, to look at what other businesses are doing and then to learn what we can do with our businesses as well. Because especially in the area that I'm in, me being an accountant, I see a lot of things with small businesses. And even working in banking, you see a lot of different examples with different businesses that it just seems, especially if they haven't gone to school to study business, you don't really know what to do. You're kind of learning as you go. And one of those things is acquiring debt to build a business, but a lot of small business owners don't know how to leverage the debt to build a business. And so a lot of times you're not even getting a return on the debt that you're just taking out. You're just acquiring debt that you don't even know if you're going to pay back because you don't know if your business is going to actually make money, because of course we know that it's no guarantee. And then also how we manage our business money. I see so many different examples with business owners where the funds may be coming in, or you have a certain amount of funds where you're able to be comfortable, but it's still not enough to cover your business and your personal. And also business owners are just, for whatever reason, especially small business owners, have not necessarily learned how to manage their business finances. And so I want to basically shed some light on some things that may help business owners create a better habit of managing business funds. And so there was, when I saw the building and I thought about that, and I thought about how they had to file for bankruptcy and basically had to shut their theaters down, I thought to myself, I said, AMC never shut down. And just off the top of my head, I'm like, AMC never shut down. And I wonder like what they did differently to stay afloat. Um, of course, we know that, everybody basically shut the doors for a period of time when everything really got bad during the pandemic. But there were some businesses, just like there were some households who did not make it through the pandemic. And then there were some that kept going. They may have still had problems, or they may have, probably was tough, but they kept going. They didn't have to shut their businesses down. Um, and AMC was one of those businesses. And so I did some research, and what I found was very interesting, very basic, but also very interesting. And so I read this article where they had an interview with the CEO of AMC, and they began to ask him, well, what did you do exactly? Like, he walked them through everything that happened when the pandemic basically happened. Um, and he said that the first thing they started to do was to keep their business afloat as they were making decisions on what they needed to do as the time was going. They began to use cash assets that they had, cash reserves. That was a big thing that stuck out to me because, of course, business and personal. When there is a tough season that your business is going through, and you don't know if you're going to bring in the money to keep your business going, the last thing you want to do is use more debt, because you still have to pay that debt back. And so during the times that your business has been thriving, during the times that your business has been bringing in thousands or hundreds or millions or even billions, how has your business been putting away cash reserves to make sure that when there is a season, which there will always be seasons where there will be a pandemic season. Not necessarily a pandemic will happen, but you will have seasons where it's almost like you're in it's just tough. The money is not coming in the way it needs to, and you have to make important business decisions, some that you really don't want to make. But during those times, what have you done in the times where your business is thriving to keep your business afloat when it's going through that rough time? And so it was really interesting to me because he began to talk about how when it first started happening, they started off pretty small, but everything was happening so fast that they started to run out of cash really fast. So some of the things they did were they began to cut down operating and capital expenses. They began to basically slash those. They began to have to lay off employees. They laid off, I think the article said 35,000 employees. They furloughed 35,000 employees. Then they began to call landlords to defer their rent. So instead of letting this whole thing happen to them, and I'm pretty sure, I don't know. I don't know what it's like to run a $1 billion or $1 million company. I don't know the process, but just these basic facts really stuck out to me because it really lets you know that they had options. They set up their business in a way where they had options, or they begin to really move fast to think, okay, what are all the options that we can exhaust to make sure that this business does not go down? And so they began to call their landlords. He said, the article says they had 700 landlords that they had to call to defer their rent, and they were able to do that. um and they began to use cash to buy time to figure out what to do. So they used their cash reserves that they had put aside and saved up, I would assume, for situations just like that, to where they could buy time to figure out, okay, what are we going to do next? And so after they did that, they began to be able to take advantage of public debt, and that began to carry them through the rest of the time where all of this was happening and everything was just getting bigger and bigger. And I thought about that, and I'm like, you know, I meet I I've witnessed so many small business owners who don't think like that. Um, we just have the thought process of They want to get to where the $1 million companies are, but they're not making $1 million decisions. And it may seem crazy to say, because how can I make $1 million decisions if I'm not making $1 million? Well, you make $1 million decisions on your level, right? So making $1 million decisions may mean you hire an accountant. There are some business owners who are making six figures and you don't have an accountant, and you don't have the time to keep up with your books. Or maybe you have an assistant, but you've already given your assistant so much to do that they can't keep up with everything all at once. And so you have to be the one to decide, okay, what can I do to make sure that because it's with your finances, your business financial sheets, that you're able to look at your business and decide what's happening with your business and what decision you need to make next. But if you don't have those books in order, then it's very hard for you to make business decisions based on your finances. And so there are a lot of small business owners who are not making $1 million decisions, or not looking at million and $1 billion companies and saying, what did they do that I need to start doing? Or looking at certain companies and saying, what are they doing that I don't need to do, or that I need to stop doing? And one of the things that I see that small business owners try to do that $1 million companies do is take on unnecessary debt, especially at the wrong time. The business industry, anything you go into right now, unless you are able to make up something that is completely different from everybody else, and everybody is not able to do that. Usually, a lot of small business owners go into something that millions of other people are already doing. And so you have to find a way to set yourself apart. But because you are going into industries that so many millions of other people are already in that industry, they're taking up place, they're making money, you have to make sure that your business is going to make money. And so if you don't sit down and look at your finances, or you don't sit down and do a good analyzation, you could possibly go into a business and then you go and get a business loan, but then you're stuck paying back that business loan because your business didn't make any money, or your business failed within the first year. And so sometimes you have to think that $1 million decision may be you deciding, I'm not going to go and acquire any debt. What I'm going to do is I'm going to save the money, and I'm going to make a list of all the things I need to start this business or keep this business going. And I'm going to pay for those things with cash. And then as I'm running the business, I'm going to begin to put money aside to have cash reserves for when something happens, or if I need something for the business, or if I'm ready to grow the business to the next level and I need to expand. That way, you're not going into debt in your business, unsure of where your business is going to go next, or unsure of what's going to happen in the world that's going to cause your business to come to a halt. Whereas cash reserves is what's going to most of the time help you stay afloat and not have to cause you issues later because you have to pay that money back. And so I began to go over the article, and it was really interesting to me, and I thought it was so good because there are a lot of people in the world that you'll talk to them and they're not aware that there are million and $1 billion companies out here who are actually saving money. It's such a big thing in today's world that you have to use other people's money to go to the next level in your life or to grow your business. And there are businesses who they may still have some debt, or they may have had debt, but they're building cash reserves because they know that your business cannot thrive on debt alone. You have to have those cash reserves. So I began to also study Regal Cinema as well. And so the the basic things that I found out with Regal Cinema, because I began to ask myself, well, what did they do differently that caused AMC to keep going, but caused Regal Cinema to shut down or temporarily shut down. And the things that I noticed with Regal was they were basically had a parent company who was already heavily in debt, um, that were already having some financial issues, so they were heavily in debt. They were not a U.S. public company, and they had less access to U.S. capital markets. But also, there some research showed or said that they were not able to move as fast as AMC. So with like making decisions when this whole thing happened, and from what I can see, I truly believe it's because they had those cash reserves. They had that money built up to buy them time to where they could make decisions fast enough and say, okay, well, we have this money here, so we can also take this approach and do this way. When you have options financially, you're able to make moves fast, or um you can also take your time and do some things depending on how much cash reserves you have. But either way, when you have money saved up or you have cash and you're not just totally dependent on debt in your business and your personal, you're able to make decisions a whole lot better. Whereas when you don't have that cash reserve, your only other thing, if you have to move fast, your only other thing to do is to go get more debt. But then you have to get approved for that debt. And then you also have to know, okay, well, how am I going to pay back the money that I've just borrowed? And you don't know what that's going to, you don't always know what that's going to look like. So you're acquiring more money that you have to pay back where you're not sure how this is going to turn out. And so looking at these two businesses, and we can learn a lot with how we run our businesses or decisions that we make. One of the things is tough times will happen for business owners. Same thing, same way that tough times will happen for us personally. We cannot expect that our business is never going to go through a tough time. It's always going to have money coming in. For me, I could never understand talking to some business owners. I can never understand how your money is coming in. You have a certain amount, you have a certain time during the year where your business is thriving. And it happens every single year where there's a certain amount of time where your business is thriving. You know these are the best months out the year. You know that you're going to make this amount of money. And instead of adjusting the business to what you know you're going to bring in to make sure you're putting aside cash reserves, some business owners will spend all the money that they bring in, whether it be on overhead, whether it be on personal things, whatever the case may be. By the time the end of the month is gone, all the money they brought in is pretty much gone. And then when the tough times come in, you're asking yourself, or you're overworking yourself to try to make more money. And during that time, the market is not where it needs to be. But you know that during this time, that these are your slow months. This is the month where you don't bring in that much money. And so in my mind, you would think that business owners would use the better months to save up money to help them sustain throughout the slower months. And a lot of times I witness that does not happen. And so to some, they're making the decision that they think they're making $1 million decisions by buying things that look shiny or investing in things that look like they have a lot of money, but not paying attention to their books or their accounting and just running out of money every single month for no reason. But those tough times in business are going to come. And just like we have to prepare for them personally, we also have to prepare for those tough times in business as well. You cannot wait for a tragedy to come before deciding to get better, to get it together. So tough times are going to come. You already know, especially if you manage your personal well, that we don't know what the future holds, especially with the way that this world is going today. We don't know At what time are we going to have another season where it's almost like the pandemic, where it's going to take a toll and we're going to have to, like the Bible says, hold the horns of the altar and try to make it through that time. We don't know when that's going to what that's going to be like or what's going to happen, but we do know that something else is going to arise. Just like something is always happening, something is always arising. Something else is going to arise that's going to have an impact, an even bigger impact on our businesses. And so we have to always be in a mode of preparing for that. And if it doesn't happen in the next year, or if it doesn't happen in the next 5 years, at least you've been preparing and preparing to where when that time does come, the more you have, the more preparation you have. That's the best way to think about it. Um, but your business cannot sustain on debt alone. We've seen so many examples of businesses, big businesses, small businesses, where they're so heavily in debt that it seems good at the moment, or it seems good during those times where your business is thriving, but then during those times where things like the pandemic happens, that debt starts to show you who's boss. Basically, your creditors and your lenders start to show you who's the boss, and in the end they always win. 60% of small business owners have less than 2 months of cash on hand. How much is that for your business? How much of 2 months of cash on hand is for your business? Is it a few hundred? Is it a few thousand? Is it a couple million? How much is that for your business? How much do you need if something were to happen today to keep your business afloat for the next 2 months? I would recommend coming up with that number and making sure those reserves are there, and making sure that, I would even go as far to say, if you do have debt in your business, whatever amount that you owe in debt, make sure that you have more than that in cash reserves. Just in case there came a time where you had to pay off that debt, you are not acquiring more debt on top of the debt you already have, but you're able to keep your business going, not having to worry about who you owe. Because when you owe lenders and creditors, most of the time, they don't care if there's a pandemic. They don't care that your business is slower during December than it is in March. They still want the money that they lent to you. They want you to keep paying the payments. They want you to keep the word that you gave them, that you were going to pay them this time during this month, and that you're going to be done by this time. They still want to know that they're going to be able to get their money back from you. Businesses with high debt rate are 3 times more likely to fail during a downturn, and we've seen that. It has been proven to us time and time again that having a business where your books are not kept up, you're not looking at your finances, you have little to no reserves, but you have a lot of debt because everybody has told you, use other people's money, use other people's money. And that's the only thing you've lived by. And yes, things seem really good. We've heard stories. If you go and you listen, even to business owners who are millionaires and billionaires today, you've heard stories where they have told you they started out with debt, a lot of debt, and they ended with nothing and had to rebuild from the ground up. Had to rebuild from the ground up because they realized that having more debt than you have cash reserves was not a good idea. Because at the end of the day, the creditors and lenders are always going to win that battle. The people that you owe are going to win. So, some of the other businesses that were impacted by similar circumstances were Sears, Blockbuster, Bed Bath and Beyond, Toys R Us, big blockbuster businesses who gave us some of the best times of our lives. Toys R Us gave us some of the best toys. Blockbuster gave us the best movie options. Sears, Bed Bath and Beyond, places that when we looked around and saw that they were gone, we were heartbroken. We're like, If you shop there, or if you were a kid and you remember going to Blockbuster, getting $5 movies just to watch with your family, and you begin to see how they begin to decline, it kind of makes you sad. And even today, we have so many conversations about how some of the businesses weren't, it wasn't just debt for them, but it was something that you can learn from those businesses. How is your business evolving? How are you moving with the times? Because some of the businesses that have gone down are businesses who thought that, or may have thought that, the way that it is now is how it's always going to be. But there have been new generations that have been born. There have been people are changing with the times. They like different things. But as the times start to progress, as the times begin to change, and as customers begin to want different things, there were some businesses who did not keep up with those changes, and so they began to decline in their business. And so that's something else that we can learn from different businesses is, how are we expanding our businesses? How are we checking with our customers to seeing what is it that you're wanting? What new things are you looking for in certain businesses? And then revamping our businesses to meet those needs, because that's why we're in business, to meet people's needs. Someone has a need and your business is helping them take care of it. But if they're coming back and they're saying, well, this year I want this done this way, and we're saying, oh no, we've done it this way all these years, why all of a sudden do we have to change it to this way? Why all of a sudden do you want to stream instead of watch a DVD? Why all of a sudden you want 3% meat instead of 2% meat? Why all of a sudden do you want why all of a sudden do you want everything shipped to you instead of going to one of our amazing stores, our brick and mortar stores? Why do you want us to ship it to you instead? Just different things that were happening and changing over time, that some businesses did not, they weren't able to keep up with it. And so you had other businesses who were already in business, and they were still thriving because they were constantly revamping their businesses. They were doing customer analyzations. They were interested in customer experiences and adapting to what their customers were looking for as times began to change. And those businesses were businesses like McDonald's, Amazon, Nintendo. If you look around, there are businesses who have, no matter what the world has gone through, have not gone down. They haven't changed. They haven't everything. They may have gone through very tough times, but the fact that they kept going, the fact they didn't have to shut down, or they didn't have to shut down all of their locations, shows that they have some really good accountants, and they were looking at their business finances. They were checking on their customers, seeing what their customers needed, different things like that. And so these are things that we can learn from these businesses. So a few things that I have to encourage business owners to start looking at in their business. Number one, the same thing I've been saying this whole time: build more cash reserves for your businesses and reduce unnecessary debt. Cash reserves will help you in the event that things begin to, because now you, even though you may have sought debt, or you may have sought business loans and things like that, and those things will be keeping your business afloat now, but how good will it feel if something were to happen in the world or in your business where you can't keep using that debt because you need to lower your expenses as much as you can? And so now you need to switch over to your cash reserves and take care of things with your cash reserves so that you can lower the amount of debt that you're using. Differentiate your experience. I still don't feel like I said that right, and I know I can talk. um, but how is your business different from other businesses? And that's very hard. Like, even with me being in business and being an accountant, it can be very hard to find a different vibe for your business, especially when you have something as simple as accounting. And it just seems like everybody's doing the same thing. But I believe there is a way where we can be different from other people in our field. And we'll always draw the people that we're supposed to have to us. Use strategic pricing, not panic pricing. So you have some businesses who something happens in the world or their business, they see a little decline in their business, and they will either change their prices too low or change their prices too high. And this has a big effect on economics, right? So you have to pay attention to the supply and demand and research that for your business to see what you should be doing with your pricing. What is the elasticity of your customers and the pricing for your business to make sure that you're not panic changing your prices. Adapt quickly. Observe your customers. What are your customers doing when things in the world begin to happen, or your business, you start to feel, you know, your business is coming up on a rough season? Learn to adapt quickly. Learn what your customers are doing. Learn what your demand is and cut what's not working. Don't be afraid to let things go. I remember um I was doing a session with one business owner, and we began to go over like her prices and all of the products that she was selling in her bakery. And I began to tell her, have you ever paid attention to what items are not selling, or maybe not selling around this time? Do you think that maybe even for this season that those items may need to come off the menu? And she began to, think about that and consider it, and maybe take a few items off her menu, because you're buying groceries, you're buying things for these items, and you're baking them, so your time and your money is going into items that are not really selling right now. And that could save you money, and it could save you time, and help you decide, okay, well, this is not working right now. So even if it's just for a season, I'm going to take this out, and I'm going to focus on perfecting the other things that is helping my business thrive. And sometimes that's what we may have to look at. Avoid taking on debt that doesn't produce revenue. I talked about that a few minutes ago. Um, if you're looking to do like a business loan, or you're looking to go and acquire things for your business, always check the return on investment. Do your numbers. Have your accountant run the numbers for your business to make sure that before you go and get this business loan, that you're actually going to make this actually going to help you make money, and it's going to help you make money, enough money to where you can pay it back fast and still have money left over. Track your metrics. Small business owners really don't. You barely find small business owners. A lot of small business owners are more focused on how can I save on taxes. And it's like that's not the only thing that you have to look forward to in business. If you're trying to grow your business, it's not just about making money. You also have to make sure you're keeping track of the money you're already making and tracking your metrics. And how can you, because you may be doing something to make more money, but you're all over the place, and you're doing more than what you need to be doing right now. You're focused on things that you may not have to be focused on if you looked at your metrics to determine what is it, what missing pieces do you have, what moving parts do you need to move around in order to bring more money into your business. And the last thing is reinvent before you decline. So same thing, always have the mindset in your business that times are always changing. There are new generations being born. There are new people. People are changing. People are wanting new things. New things are being invented every day. How is your business being able to keep up with the things that are being reinvented, with the things that are changing? How is your business able to keep up with those things? And so that's all I have. I hope this was helpful. And I hope that if you have a small business and you're trying to grow your business to the next level, that you were able to take something from this video. Thank you for coming back and watching some Money Talks with Simone J.